Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, folks. We're back. It's the NFC West.
The world still hitting them corners and them lolos.
It's the call of the Cardinals.
There's only one team, and they're the Seahawks. One.
Still taking my time to perfect the beat, and I still got love for the streets. It's the DRE. Representing for the gangsters all across the world. Still.
Hey there, boys. It's been a few weeks. Happy holidays to you all. It's great to catch up with you guys. How you all been? Sam, Jason, Bo, good to see you all.
Great to be here.
Yep, always good to see you guys.
Yep, all good.
All good. So, obviously, NFC West is all wrapped up, done and dusted by the shouting. And Sam, but I'll come back to how we wrapped it up in your backyard, Bo, because we haven't managed to catch up since then. But I just think that it's kind of all falling apart basically for you, Jason, with Kyler going down, and I know you've been decimated with injuries most of the season. That one hurts even more. That's kind of you kind of packing up, pretty much done and dusted, right?
Yeah, the fun part about our season is if you look at the our IR list, you could put together a whole team that could be they could be very competitive week in and week out from just the players on our IR squad. So, no, it is what it is. I had high hopes coming into this season, didn't pan out. Whether it be injuries or coaching snafus, whatever. We find ourselves in this situation, 2 games remaining, and we got to play out the remaining 2 games and into next year. So, hopefully the guys remaining on the roster realize that, hey, Cardinal fans are watching, and those guys on the roster, they're playing for an extension, they're playing for next season, whether it be this team or another team, right? They're all auditioning, so hopefully they put together some good film and some good tape. And but unfortunately, not everybody out there has that Buda Baker, JJ Watt mindset.
Yeah, and it's been, I think Budi's now gone, isn't he? To put him on IR with
he's got a separated shoulder.
Shoulder.
Yep. He did that in the game and finished the game. So he's just not human. I think he's a cyborg, and it's just unreal what he does week in and week out.
And then JJ's hanging up his cleats, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, which is funny because I've been talking with other Cardinal fans the last couple of weeks, months, like, man, talk about playing for another contract. He's just playing out of this world. 2 games ago, I think it was against the Broncos when he had that 3-sack game.
Oh, yeah.
And a strip sack, tackle for loss. He hasn't had a 3-sack game since 2015. So just to see him do that at such a high level, playing at a high level, playing across there's been a lot. I've had the chance to see and watch LT play and Reggie White and obviously Aaron Donald in our own division, but it's rare, and maybe you guys can jog my memory a little bit, but to see a guy travel up and down that defensive line and win every single position he's at, that's just rare. You don't see that line up over the center, over the guard, over the tackle, or on the end, and he just wins. His win rate is ridiculous, whether it's a single, a double, a chip, it doesn't matter. And he's as much of a great Hall of Fame first ballot Walter Payton Man of the Year kind of football player he is, he's a better man off the field. So we're just lucky to have him. We're however short it was, and hopefully he sticks around in this community a little bit, and we get to see some more of JJ Watt.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, you don't get many of those guys in the world. As a man, all the stuff he does off the field, and the donations, the charity work. You say Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee many times. I'm sure he won it at least once, right?
Yeah, he did.
If not, yeah, and there's lots of stuff he does. And as you say, he could just win matchups everywhere. He was, almost a freak. But then, it's almost the Watt family is all that way, isn't it?
Absolutely, man. It runs in the blood, right? I mean, and again, just to have a front row seat and just see what he's doing this year, it's just absolutely amazing just to see. And even when he doesn't get that sack, which everyone is in love with, just to see him pressure the quarterback, have to push the quarterback off a spot, win his battle with the double team or whatever. Um, Guys like Zach Allen on our D line, they see that.
Mm,
Guys like Majay Sanders, guys like Cam Thomas, who are rookies or in their second year. We have nothing to play for, and they look over and they see this JJ Watt guy
just
going
smashing people,
200
going.
miles per hour, just smashing people.
Yeah.
Man, if that doesn't make you want to run through a brick wall, you don't have a pulse and you shouldn't be in this league. So,
Yeah. And as you say,
again, it
you
was
hope
just
that
fun. Yeah, it was just fun to be able to watch him, and I appreciate greatness, and I love watching him play, and I wish him the best.
yeah, and as you say, you hope your young guys who are sticking around next year or for early in their rookie contract see that, learn from it, see that that's even at the end he's still the ultimate pro, still working hard, still doing the hard yards of practice and in the gym, and still going out there with nothing to play for, and still as you say, just showing up and doing the stuff that he's been doing.
Yeah, he runs wind sprints every practice he's at. He runs wind sprints every practice we have. So, I mean, he acts like he's still a rookie trying to make the team. And it's funny, when he first got here, or when Zach Allen first was drafted, he took immediately Zach Allen under his wing. And it's funny now to see them on Hard Knocks. Zach Allen is like a spitting image of JJ Watt. The way he talks, the way he moves, even on the field, his techniques and his dance moves need a little help. But he's a little JJ Watt, and I'm very excited to see him grow and progress in this game.
Yeah, and then as you say, it could be many better players or people to learn how to play
Right?
the game, be a man around
Absolutely.
the whole thing. So
On and
good
off the
luck to
field.
him.
Yep.
Just on your, as you say, you're playing for contracts and play guys. You want to show up and play for the uniform and play for the fans for the last couple of games. How do you think Kyler going down has given Cliff Kingsbury a pass for next year? Do you think he's going to stick around now that because nobody's going to want to kind of go there with Kyler down and not really sure when he's back and everything tied to the quarterback? Do you think he's been given a mulligan for the year, kind of like, wow, you've had lots of injuries, come back and try again? Or
Yeah, great question. No, no, I don't think so. I really think it's going to be very tough for him to stick and stay in his job. Regardless of how our end result, the end record has looked, this is the first year that Cliff has had us go backwards. Right, every year he's progressed. We've gone from 3 to 5 wins, from 5 to 8 wins, 8 wins to 11 wins. This is the very first year that we've actually slid back. Okay,
Yeah, but like you said,
and I think what's that?
I said, but like you said, your whole team was on IR. So I mean, that's tough.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, and Sam knows. Look at Sean McVay. Sean McVay is the smartest man in the room, and that's any room he's in. And when you're injured at that level, there's not a lot you can do. It's really really tough to compete in this league. But I really think what kind of put the nail in Cliff's coffin was our GM Steve Keim. When Steve Keim just took this medical leave, I'm 99% certain it's alcohol related, um, and I really think Michael's kind of done. With Steve, he stood by Steve, he's defended Steve to the nth degree, and I think he's going to move on and turn the page when it comes to that. And I just don't know. Guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know of another owner of a team that's brought in a new GM, and the new GM's been like, okay, you know what, we're going to stay status quo, and
let's see
everybody
what
gets
we
to
got.
do their job. It just
You all
doesn't
got your
happen.
job, but let's
That
see
new
what you got.
GM,
It doesn't
that
happen,
new
does it?
yeah, that new GM wants to bring in a new coaching staff, and we kind of have a bad taste in our mouth because before Cliff was a guy named Steve Wilkes. And Steve Wilkes, we had a 53-man roster made for a 3-4 defense. And Steve Wilkes came in and said, I absolutely can run a 3-4 defense. So we hired him, and he ran a 4-3 defense. And it was really tough for our roster to catch up with that. And Steve Keim, I mean, I'm not saying he's the best GM in the world, but when you have to draft this, he had 4 different head coaches. When you have to draft, depending on the different coach, 4 different coaches, you're buying the groceries depending on 4 different dinners that they're making. It's very, very hard. Steve Keim ran a very, very, very different scheme than, let's say, Bruce Arians, then say Cliff. I mean, these are different guys, so you've got to draft according to the cook, right? So it was
Cook's
very, very
constantly
tough.
changing.
It was very, very tough, and but I really think that Michael Bidwell is done with Steve Keim, and I think a new GM is man inevitable. And I really think there's a lot of changes on the way, which is really sad because I really didn't think we were that far away. I think maybe a few pieces here and there, younger on the offensive line. Let's spend some money, please, on the defensive side of the ball. And man, we're right there in the thick of things. Last year we won 11 games. But it's like if you bring that stuff in, that new GM, that new head coach, you're starting over again. Outside of Aaron Rodgers and over there in Green Bay, I can't think of another brand new head coach that instantly had success. Instantly. It just doesn't happen. It's a
Yeah.
2-year, 3-year process. You look at the 49ers and when they brought in Shanahan, right? And they had your
Yeah.
GM. That first draft, I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. That first year, I believe you guys won 3 games,
Yep.
but you could see it. You could see the play on the field, and everybody else in the NFC West was like, whoa, look out.
Well, yeah, they're coming back. Yeah.
They are coming back. And you guys just won 3 games. Okay. It's a slow process, and that's if you nail everything right, and you guys were at the Super Bowl, what, 2 years later? You did, you nailed everything right. So, it's a scary proposition. It's a scary time to be a Cardinal fan because you're not quite sure which direction we are going to go in, but hey, I, I think 80%, that might be a bit high. 80% of Cardinal fans do believe, though, we have our franchise quarterback in place, and he just needs to get his head on right. He needs to grow up a little bit, realize that his shit does stink, and that he can have his ass handed to him at any time.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens.
Need to
Yeah,
start
you do
reading
wonder.
that playbook, watching
And
them
get it, yeah,
tapes.
get it,
Doing a bit
get
of
it
studying.
out
Yeah.
playbook. Yep.
But also, I suppose, as you say, he may grow. This injury will probably not force him to grow up, but certainly you'd hope bring a bit of sort of retrospective to him, to his thought and his process and his game, because it was him doing this scrambling around that
Yeah,
you
yeah.
won't want to say caused it, but if he wasn't
No.
out
Yeah,
there
Gary,
doing it, they
absolutely.
wouldn't
You
have happened.
hope, right? You hope. You hope that this year was a huge lesson, Kyler. So take this year as a huge lesson. You humbled, right? And I hope that you take this year, Kyler, as you're not that good at pre-snap reads. Okay. And that's a direct correlation to how much studying you do. These guys like Kurt Warner, these guys like Carson Palmer, they didn't just wake up one morning and they were just great at pre-snap reads. Kurt Warner studied more than any quarterback in the history of the league. He's somewhere right now studying football,
He's
and he's
still
been
reading and still
retired for a
studying. Yeah.
decade. I mean, you have to study, study. What does Tom Brady preach? Study, 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 study. I mean, when he got up at the podium at the beginning of the year after Kyler signed this big contract, he goes, it's kind of, laughable that you guys think I could get here on talent alone. Well, yeah, I do actually. And you kind of proved it. You did kind of get there on talent alone because your talent is ridiculous. You have more talent in your pinky finger than most NFL athletes have in their entire body. But to go to that next level that he wants to go to, he's got to study. His
You
pre-snap
can't just
reads,
rely on that. Yeah.
especially with Rodney Hudson out of the equation every game this year, and that's our all Pro Bowl center who calls out the rush schemes and the blitz schemes was out. Kyler, you needed to step up in a big way and make those reads. And I think he tried, but he's horrible at it. So hopefully this just humbles him. and he gets better and comes back ready to work. They say he's going to be ready for week 1. It was a clean tear, and he'll be ready for week 1 next year. So we'll see.
Fingers crossed he rehabs with the playbook close to hand, right? Sam,
Fingers
I know you've
crossed.
got a bit of a short window,
Better than
so so Sam, how do you feel about the Baker Mayfield roller coaster that's happening at SoFi?
I mean, it was exciting on Christmas Day. I mean, I stayed up and watched it. It was, yeah, it was. I mean, the fact that we didn't have I think that's probably the best I've ever seen Baker Mayfield play. I think it's the best I've seen the Rams play all year. And to think we did that without, the likes of Cook, Donald, Robinson, Stafford, like pretty much, all of our big hitters from last year, and obviously the ones that were expected to be big hitters this year. And we just seemed to, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was probably 70% the Broncos being crap, but, I think we did
It's
really
the Broncos
well.
being the Broncos this year, you mean?
Yeah. But the Broncos also not doing what they normally do on defense as well, which obviously I think made it a lot easier for Baker. But the one thing I have noticed with having Baker as the quarterback is the style of play has changed, which again, so we were talking about obviously though, like these head coaches and those who are sort of, I suppose, the elite and those who are not. I mean, the fact that essentially what McVay has had to do with basically reshaping the way that they play this game. I mean, the fact that I think we've rushed for the last 5 weeks over 100 yards each game just shows you that the way that they've changed the game and how they play. And I know it hasn't always been successful, but I think what it's shown is that if we can convince McVay to stay, that no matter who we have at quarterback, we would be okay. I mean, don't get me wrong, I would love to have Stafford back. I don't particularly want Mayfield there. If Mayfield, for whatever reason, does stay, which I don't think he will because he wants to be a starter, and I don't think he'll want to stay as a backup. I think if for whatever reason Stafford isn't back next year or he does decide to retire, and we do look at potential quarterbacks, I wouldn't be angry with Baker being the starting quarterback, but looking at who is available, I think it would be a potential sort of banana skin that we then go with Baker. So
just because you go with him because you know him and he's been in the building, and it's an easier decision because it's not a full clean new one.
I mean, to be fair, he's McVay's always said that he really liked him. He spoke with him when he was
said that at the draft. Yeah.
I mean, I think there was that he said that he basically sat with him for hours leading up to the actual draft, and they just chatted about
on the plane ride home. Yeah,
and just chatted, and you just think if he can develop, if he's already got a good working relationship with Baker, and the way that he's starting to play now that he's been had longer than 48 hours of the playbook, there is the potential that could McVay get the best out of Baker? Could we see the Baker that everyone thought Baker was going to be, rather than the Baker of the Browns for the past God knows how many years?
Well, I mean, he flashed at the Browns, didn't he? And he got some good play out of there before it all kind of went a bit haywire, and the whole adverts and OBJ and everything else started to take over.
It's easy to look decent when you have an all-star cast around you, though. I mean, that Browns team had an immense amount of talent. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think he would be great if you have, your full complement of receivers and everybody back too. Like, I think he would do a decent job. Mm-hmm. I know Stafford wants to come back, but I mean, a spinal contusion's no joke. So, that's whether or not he can actually go. But I don't know if you bring back Baker, although, I mean, again, McVay does have that relationship with him. So, maybe he can make him what, some people thought he was going to be. But I don't know. Maybe you make a play for Carr.
Yeah, you know who McVay's also going to have a relationship with? A winning quarterback, and that relationship's going to happen real quick. So, Will Parcells said this a long time ago. He said, "Let a athlete or NFL player show you who he is, and then believe him." I think that Baker and I don't dislike the guy. I actually do like him, and I think he fits in the Rams McVay mold very well. He's very scrappy. He's mobile. Doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Doesn't throw a lot of interceptions. And I think McVay can't get the best out of him. But Baker has shown us who he is, and it's our job to believe him, right? So let's play a little would you rather. Would you rather have Baker Mayfield or Daniel Jones?
I mean, I'd rather have Baker.
Yeah, Baker.
I mean, I can't believe there was even sort of a moment's hesitation there. It was like,
Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield?
Still Mayfield.
Depends if it's Darnold from the last week or so.
How about Michael White? How about Mike White or Baker Mayfield?
No, I'd take Baker over Mike White.
And then Carr over.
I think I'd take Baker.
Yeah, I really think Baker could come a lot cheaper. To me, Stafford as a Bruce Arians quarterback, no risk it, no biscuit. He's that quarterback that just rips it 70 yards and a hope and a prayer. And I don't know if that's a McVay, if that fit perfectly. Although they did great things over there, right? But I don't know. Baker does kind of fit that mold, and he's going to come cheaper, which allows you to spend money elsewhere. Of course, the cap is not through over there for the Rams.
It doesn't count in so far. Yeah.
The big issue that we're going to face, or at least the big sort of decision, really will be: is Stafford going to come back? Is he going to be fit? Is he going to be able to come back from a spinal contusion? And is
a medical team going to sign off on it? I mean, he might want to be jumping at the bit, but maybe the doctors come along and go, "Hey, no."
And I mean, obviously, Kelly's been very sort of vocal, hasn't she, about the whole situation?
She should be, yeah.
So I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of those things that we wait to hear on what happens. But Baker doesn't want to be a backup, and I don't blame him because he does. Right. He's shown he has the talent.
Sure.
But I think the issue will be I think he's even said himself, if he could stay in this offense and be the starting quarterback, he would sign up straight away. However, he knows
the shadow of Stafford is there, isn't it?
Stafford is the franchise quarterback. We've paid him millions, and obviously all the draft picks we've given up for him. If he's fit, he's playing.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless the only other way that we could go about it is if we got rid of Stafford, but really it just seems a bit pointless because we've spent so much on getting him, and bar the injuries, he would have. I mean, we could have obviously done a lot better than what we've done, but it's such a difficult situation to be in that I think if Stafford's fit, you just have to say thanks Baker, but we're going to stick with Stafford.
He got us out of the hole, and
I don't think it's going to be a Rams decision. I think it's going to be a Matthew Stafford decision.
It's going to be a Matthew and a Kelly Stafford decision.
Yeah.
Doctors are probably may have a point, but I think
we've seen that before with Kurt and Brenda Warner. It wasn't a Cardinal decision; it was a Kurt and Brenda Warner decision, and we still hate Brenda Warner for that decision.
Thing is, but as you say, Sam, spinal contusions, you don't mess around with those things.
That's it. I mean, and if I'm right in thinking, it's the second time he's actually had a similar injury, a neck injury, quite a serious neck injury. So, it's not just a case of it's a one-off. This has, from what I gather, has happened before. So,
yeah, I mean, you have to think that he has a real chance at retiring. It's actually why I wasn't super surprised with Watt saying he was retiring after the heart issue earlier in the year.
Yep.
I kind of figured it was going to be his last season. I figured he'd play it out, but I kind of assumed that was going to be it, especially with, the injury history coming up. And so Stafford, similarly, right? He's had some injuries. This is a major one. I mean, you already got your ring. You have that where you are a legit shot to get into the Hall. I mean, I don't know. I think at that point you start to look at your health and, especially health after football.
Right.
I think the big issue could be is that he could injure that spinal contusion again. And
exactly.
Worst come to worst, he could never walk again. It's
Exactly.
that sort of serious situation.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're putting up the case of that you'll never be able to actually walk with, you know, be able to
Take your kids
walk
to
your
the
kid down
park
the
and do
aisle,
the
take them
stuff.
to the
Yeah.
park, all of that sort of stuff.
That's silly. This is a game. We're talking
Yeah.
about a game.
And he's and if from a Stafford perspective, he's proven that he can be the best.
Yeah.
He's got, just as Bo said, he's got his ring. He's got all the stuff. He's ticked all the
Yeah.
boxes.
And you figure he was a stat monster when he was in Detroit.
Absolutely.
It didn't equate to wins all the time because the defense was horrendous. But I mean, dude put up 4,000 yards every year. So, I mean, he's done just about everything he can do. So, I mean, if it came down to a questionable, medical release, yeah, I mean, I think you hang him up.
Yeah. But like you say, the Baker's decision will be based upon.
Oh, Stafford, for sure.
There's really bad feedback. I don't know what it is, but yeah,
I think it's on the yeah.
I think the big thing will be is if Stafford decides to retire, I think we move for Baker. If Stafford says I'm playing 2023, I'm fit, I'm ready to go, then Baker signs to someone else, and I think that's the simple case of it.
My big question, NFC West Cardinal fan question, is not the quarterback, because I think you're going to be fine either way, whether it be Stafford, Baker, or some quarterback you bring in. My big question, for me, more importantly, is what are you going to do at the running back position? Because you guys almost go as that running back position goes. Once you guys started clicking with Cam Akers, all of a sudden that offense was more balanced. It allowed that defense to rest a little bit more, play more balanced. It allowed Ben Skoranek and Higbee to be open more, and Baker to look better. So I'm really hoping that Akers does not come back, and that you guys have no running backs next year.
I think next year could be interesting. I think I was looking at some of the running backs that are going to be potentially available. I mean, obviously Saquon Barkley is available, but he'll get picked up on his 5th-year option. That's almost a guarantee. Jacobs is going to be available, which I think if I'm McVay, I'm looking at Jacobs and just thinking we're going to trade to get rid of Akers. I mean, Akers has been good for the last few weeks, and he has started to look more like the Akers from his college years. Who are you taking, Akers or Jacobs? And for me, I would go Jacobs. I think Jacobs is a much better
I personally would rather have, not being an NFC West, I would rather have Akers than a guy who's done it. He did it in his contract year. I'm always wary of guys who do it in their contract year.
Get that.
I'm a huge Darnell Dockett fan. I got a huge picture up on him in my wall. He's right there. That's Darnell Dockett. His very first contract, he waited to ball out his contract year, and I was really pissed. And he proved me wrong because he continued to ball out. But that really, I hate that.
The only thing I would say with that is the fact that Akers, after obviously all the issues that happened with Akers off the field earlier in the season, he could easily be performing to get a trade away, and that's the reason
why he's putting himself in the shop window, much like Jacobs.
That's exactly what Jacobs is doing. Jacobs is balling out to get a contract, whether it be with the Raiders
on his shoulder because the Raiders didn't pick him up. It's kind of
the Raiders didn't pick up his 5th-year option. When you play 4 years for a team and they're like, nah, we're not going to pick up your 5th-year option, that's a warning sign to any other team and to all 31 other teams. Like, hey, this guy, and all of a sudden he's balling out, and he's balling out. But I would be a little bit weary.
I mean, leading rusher, isn't he? He's like,
he's up there, top 2, 3.
Then when Zeke signed his, right? He balled out. He got his payday. He hasn't done anything. This year, he started to look good again, only because there's an out in his contract at the end of the year. It's not technically a contract year, but it's a don't get cut from this team.
And everybody and their brother, even the people in Ezekiel Elliott's family, is like, yeah, Tony Pollard looks better in that backfield. I mean, right?
Yeah.
So I don't
It's
know
a risky
if
one.
all consider the same. I'd rather have Cam Akers. His potential, I think, his ceiling is higher than Josh Jacobs. I think we're seeing Josh Jacobs' ceiling, and I really think Cam Akers' ceiling. If he can just get his head on straight, put him in that balanced offense, give him that lead role. I don't think he does well with that competition thing.
Yeah, the running
Just
back
hand
by
him the
committee
reins.
doesn't
I
work
think
for
he
him,
would.
does it?
Yeah, I think he would do very well because man, he's just dripping with talent.
Yeah,
Well,
I
He'd
mean,
be cheaper. He'd pretty cheaper than Jacobs as well for you guys,
well,
surely.
Oh, for
he's only in
sure.
his third year at the moment.
So
This is currently his third year. Yeah, because he had his. Is this, yeah, it must be his third
let's
year.
see.
he
So
does that.
Yeah.
He does have that element where he needs the more touches to get going. You know, he's not one of those guys that
just
on
want to light it up straight off. Yeah.
like half a dozen touches, he's good to go. He's more of that Adrian Peterson where his first half a dozen touches are really not going to go anywhere. But as the game goes and he's really starting to click in the offense, then that's where it really starts to open up as the game goes on. So
Those 1.5s turn into 3 and 5s.
Yeah, and that's a sign of a physical back who likes contact, and that's exactly what Cam Akers is. We saw that. I saw that with Kenyon Drake when Kenyon Drake was our running back. His stats in the first quarter did not look the same as the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter, he was an absolute beast. Same with James Conner. James Conner does not run away from contact; he runs to contact, and that drives me crazy. I wish he'd run out of bounds more. But those kind of guys, you like them. They're running backs, and man, I would love it if he left the Rams and got out of our division because Cam Akers is just dripping with talent.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, McVay said when all of that kicked off that if there was ever a chance, he would always have the door open for him to come back, and he has. Now
kind
this
of
might
shown that,
be,
hasn't he?
like you say, this might be the time where everything's been, the hatchet's been buried. He's been given his opportunity and he's taken it. And
Yeah.
McVay's now turning around and saying, right, well, you are the future. So, you know, he could be traded or he could stay. I think it's another one of those where it's going to be so. The offseason
Depends who he's getting the ball from.
Interesting, yeah.
And also we still don't know if. I mean, I know Donald got his payout. He could still leave. I mean, if he decides to retire, he talked about it last year. He could do it this year.
Yep.
McVay
He's
said
another.
he is
He's
going
another
to
one,
stay
isn't
next
he?
year. So
Donald and Stafford, those guys, they've all got their ring. They've all done it. They've got. I mean, as you said earlier, maybe they come back because it's been such a stinker of a year. They don't want to go out on that. But
McVay has said that he's come out and said that he's going to be there next year no matter what. And I think he was talking about how this had been his most out of all the years that he's been a head coach. This was by far his most important season to have basically bombed because I think, let's be honest, he's had the luck of the draw for most of the time he's been Rams head coach.
He's been the golden boy, isn't he? So,
yeah, and I think this year he
sure.
said he's learned more this year than he has in his whole career. So you know, I think as well it is showing in the fact that he has had to change his offense slightly and you know he's had to make different calls and it has been a very difficult year with all the injuries. But I would like to say that I would like to see us come back and do what we did. Not necessarily, you know, last year because I don't think we're going to reach that.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to see that.
No, I think 3 out of 4 of us are not on that page.
But I would like to see. I would like to see what would happen if we could just sort out the O-line and actually bring back all the weapons. I think we'd be close to where we were, if not more than last year.
Yeah, I would like to see that NFC West get back on top again and be that dominant division we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what it needs, isn't it? Because I mean,
you guys end up Kareem Hunt because he's also a free agent running back this year.
Wow. Had
So
to go there, didn't you, Bo?
Matt, if he could be a tandem in the backfield for us, that'd be amazing.
Kareem Hunt as an RB2, that's just stop it.
I think Kareem Hunt wants a little bit more of the spotlight than to go with a split like that because I want to give Kenneth Walker the ball more. I think if you're not giving Kenneth Walker the ball, that kind of hurts your offense. He's that good. But yeah, if you were to put Kareem Hunt in a Rams backfield, or even as much as I love James Conner, you're telling me I could have Kareem Hunt in my backfield,
Well,
oh man,
imagine,
I'm gonna jump at that.
imagine if they say they keep Geno and they go back to some of Seattle's most dominant offenses through the years, which were split backs. So if you had a Hunt Walker backfield tandem, that could be, I mean, because they want to run the ball anyway, right? So
Sure.
if you had that, you had your offset tight ends, and then you have your speed guys on the outside. I mean, throughout any of the Super Bowl runs for the Seahawks, they've had dual backs, whether they had two halfbacks or a true fullback back there. So if you had those two guys back there, that'd be a scary offense to see.
Right, guys, I'm gonna dip out. I'm gonna head off.
All right. Good to
All
see
right,
you.
see you, Sam. Nice talking to you.
Great to see you again, Sam. Have a good one.
No doubt that would be a scary offense. I really don't think that's what Kareem Hunt's looking for. I think that he's probably considering this as doing his time over with the Browns. That way he could be the man somewhere, and he's definitely not going to be the man over in Seattle. That's Kenneth Walker all the way. And I really don't think that would make the guys on the outside, Lockett and DK Metcalf, very happy if you turned into like a
Heavy
Ravens
Baltimore
of the West
Ravens,
type
yeah.
offense where you just ran the ball 80% of the time, and then did a tight end throw here and there. But yeah, Kareem Hunt, that's just a scary proposition.
Maybe
But
we'll
yeah,
pick
if
him
you
up.
could have like a
You know,
Kareem Hunt feature back and sprinkle in a 20-30% somebody else.
Yep.
Man, ugh, that's scary.
hopefully the Rams don't wrap something up and go out and get somebody like that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think they'll have a hard time doing it because they're still kind of handicapped with cap space, draft capital. I mean,
It doesn't exist
Cap
with the
space.
Rams. It does not exist with the Rams.
exactly. I mean, I think they're kind of hamstrung with what it is they've got. And if everybody comes back healthy, it's still a solid team. I mean,
Right.
they're very viable for the division, but everybody's getting older. They paid a ton for everybody, so depth suffered for sure.
Right.
I think that's what's showing now, isn't it? That their depth isn't there once a few of those guys go down. Then their second and third levels aren't there because it's all the front 15, it's all the front 22, and when you start to scratch the surface, it's not quite as
Well, or are you seeing as of late, you are seeing that depth is solid. Anytime you get hurt at this magnitude, right, and you all of a sudden your first string, that first line of defense is out, right, and you got to throw in that second string in. That first time they're in, they're shell shocked, and they're gonna get their asses handed to them, right? Well, for the Rams, and I know us, we're talking about our third string, fourth string guys off practice squad. So there's going to be a learning curve of 2, 3, 4 weeks. Well, we haven't quite learned. There's bits and pieces that offensive line will play well for only having one starter. Our back end of our defense will play well. The defensive line will play well. Our receivers will play well. But we all can't get on the same page at the same time. We almost beat the Buccaneers, and we were up 10 in the fourth, and we just can't see it. The Rams are in a very similar situation, but you just see progression. You just see. I just feel like they have better coaches. When it comes to offensive line coach, linebacker coaches, quarterback coaches. And you are seeing some of that depth. They have to play with depth, and you're seeing some of those guys produce. They're throwing the ball, and some of the guys catching the ball. You're like, who? Who's that guy?
He's not in my fantasy squad. He's not even in my fantasy roster. It's like, who is this guy?
Yeah, no, like I was working at Walmart last week. No, I mean you're not wrong. They've definitely been able to do some things with pieces that you wouldn't think were there. But I mean, obviously this last game hanging 51 on the Broncos didn't make any sense. I mean, mostly they gave them in scoring position anyway, right? Those turnovers were in the red zone. So
we were in Colorado watching the game. My brother and brother-in-law live there, and they can't stand the Broncos. And we're watching the Broncos come out of the tunnel, and both of them said, oh my gosh, look at their body language. I'm like, what? He's
Oh, they're
like, they look defeated.
yeah.
They look like they can't stand that. They hate being there. I'm
Yep.
like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then the Rams put up a 50 burger. So I'm like, well, maybe you were onto something. That
Maybe
reading
they
that body
spotted something
language.
now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so Bo, do you reckon Hackett's coming over to Seattle, seeing as you've already fleeced the Broncos for all their picks and you've managed to offload a aging, rusting quarterback on them? You may as well pick up their offensive coordinator.
I mean, if he was coming as an offensive coordinator, maybe, but if he's trying to
Right.
be a coach, I think they can keep him.
maybe Pete brings him on as a protege.
Man, I hope not. He looked just lost all season. I mean, you feel bad for him, right? Because I mean, he had so many things go wrong, and they tried to jam so many pieces together to gel the first year. I feel like he was really set at a disadvantage to begin with. And I think some of that really has to do with the media hyping it up as they're only a quarterback away. And they had one of the worst offensive lines. I don't know why everybody forgets about that. I mean, their offensive line was ranked between 15th and 20th, depending on which thing you looked at. So that's not exactly inspiring confidence in a guy that has trouble, scrambling at this point. So you have a new coach, new staff, a GM that,
Doesn't have a clue what he's doing.
yeah. And then you have a quarterback that doesn't know doesn't know this system, has a bunch of new pieces, gets nothing in the preseason work-wise, and then somehow they expect they're going to go to the Super Bowl was the most just asinine thing that the media kept rolling out. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like everybody was set up for failure in that scenario. Now, obviously, nobody saw Wilson just absolutely being horrendous, but
Pete Carroll did.
I mean, yeah, nobody expected that drop off. I mean,
No one expected that drop off. I really sympathize actually with Nathaniel Hackett because the look on his face and the thoughts going through his minds were exactly like the looks on my face and the thoughts going through my mind when I drafted Russell Wilson in the 12th round to be my fantasy quarterback, because I thought for sure I had a stellar roster. And I'm like, this Russell guy, I watched him for 10, 11 years make us look stupid, and he's just going to kill it over there in Denver. And I was partly right. He killed it, not in Denver, but he killed my fantasy hopes and dreams. And, man, so I really felt for Nathaniel. I knew what he was thinking. He was thinking this guy's the answer. And, hey, the offensive line, being 15, 20th, depending on who you looked at. And that's where that pre-snap read comes in, right? You look at Kurt Warner the year we went to the Super Bowl. Our offensive line was atrocious, which was ironic because we had Russ Grimm as our offensive line coach, Hall of Famer, hog line from the Redskins. And, when he came over, Russ Grimm, I thought, man, this is amazing. We're going to have this killer offensive line. No, it didn't happen ever. But Kurt Warner made them look amazing because he's the best quarterback I've ever seen in my life against the blitz. He knew where the ball was going before it was snapped. So I really thought a guy like Russell Wilson going over there, even though Denver didn't have the best offensive line, I thought Russell was extremely smart. He knew his football IQ was through the roof. He had decent receivers, very good tight end. And I really thought, yeah, even though he was older and his legs ain't what you were used to be, he could get himself out of trouble. I saw him do it all the time, over here. And man, he made me feel like I'm like, you know what? I know absolutely nothing about football. Nothing. I thought he was good. I thought he was good this whole time.
Yeah, I mean that drop off was really amazing because his decline was coming, right? Like you could see it over the last couple of years, and especially as Seahawk fans, just because he bulked up and he wasn't as elusive anymore.
Right.
And then, like the biggest thing as a Hawks fan was you could see him really buy that hype of I'm the long ball thrower,
that moon ball,
right? Mm-hmm. And so then all of a sudden,
so good at that though.
No, he is, but the problem is if it's not there, you got these check downs that are designed to be check downs. So
right.
Check down and keep the chains moving.
Just moon it. Eventually it'll work. Eventually it'll work.
And he doesn't do that.
Not like he did earlier in his career, right? So
Not like he should, yeah.
As soon as he had that like media team really like building that brand for him, his style of play really changed. I mean, he still put up awesome stats, but his style really changed. And then, you know, you knew there had to be something going on when we have an OC for 1 year. We win 11 games and they cut him. So you had to know there was pressure from Wilson to be like, I want to throw the ball. I want to throw the ball. I don't know. It wasn't encouraging. I'm glad that the Broncos decided to give it a try and give us tons of picks and, you know, some solid players. Like that really sped the rebuild along.
Yeah, it did.
I mean, it did. I mean, the 6 draft picks that you dropped in and are starters for you certainly haven't hurt. But you know, you're at the moment you are looking really pretty in the draft right now. I mean, you've got the 2nd pick with the Broncos' current position.
Still, it's the 3rd. It's the 3rd.
Still the 3rd, is it?
Because the Bears were, you know, the Bears.
Hopefully Schneider screws it up.
Yeah. Although who knows? The Texans are surprising people. They may move out of that first spot.
I mean, they're a team that are really pushing hard to lose that first pick, aren't they? At the moment, they're putting up some good numbers. They're really trying hard, and it's like
they've been good the last 3 weeks. I mean, they beat let's be honest, a terrible Titans team at this point. But I mean, taking KC to overtime is no joke. And then I mean, they had Cowboys down to the wire. So those last 3 weeks have been really impressive with these guys.
Good and interesting. And for the Niners, you know, looking at us, you know, leading in. Apologies, Jason, but it looks like we're getting a bye week in week 18.
Yeah, do we have to talk about the Niners?
I mean, come on.
Can we just got the NFC right here?
We just kind of wrap it up now. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what the Raiders are doing. So you know, we've laughed at Derek Carr and not. You know, I know he might get injured in the last 2 games, and they're on the hook for a bucket load of money. But it's like, and you know, it's like, wow. I mean, that's a team that's just mailing it in, even though they're kind of still mathematically in the hunt for a wild card, right? And it's like
Oakland, I don't see it as they're. I think I'm probably definitely in the minority here, but I think Oakland's actually doing the smart thing, and I think fans a lot of times cheer for that name on the back of the jersey and not the name on the front of the jersey. Because you look at that division, right? You got Patrick Mahomes in that division. Is Carr better than Patrick Mahomes?
No.
Okay. Then you got Justin Herbert in that division. Is Carr better than Justin Herbert?
No.
No, not at all. Well, this year we gave Carr, we gave him what? You gave him Adams, and you give him a Josh Jacobs who's playing outside of his mind. With a Max Crosby who's outstanding, and Chandler Jones who's Cardinal fans disagree, but a Chandler Jones who's very you know he's a formidable foe right out there. And what's Carr done?
On the edge. Yeah,
what's Carr done? So I think Al Davis Jr. sees, look, I got to keep up with Kansas City. I got to keep up with the Chargers that are up and coming. They're putting pieces together. That defensive side of the ball looks scary. The offensive side of the ball looks scary. They just need to get their act together. I've got the 3rd, maybe the 4th best quarterback in our division, and I'm going to give him a boatload of money? I don't think so.
I think you're right. I think the Raiders are doing
the fans
the
love
business
Carr,
side.
as much as Raiders fans love Carr, and as much as a great guy as Carr is, hey, it's about what's on the front of the jersey, not what's on the back.
Sure, but so if you're going to do that, who do you put in place that's going to be better than Carr? That's going to be available?
And this is a crapshoot, but you try to draft, because I don't think there's a free agent that's available that's better than Carr.
Well, and outside of the
but the draft, right?
the rest of the ones in the draft are kind of projects. None of them are like the number one overall pick probably will be, but beyond that, they're guys that realistically should probably sit a year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So is one of those guys going to be better than Carr this next season? I mean, I don't see that as a real option.
And I don't disagree with you, but that's also not a reason to break the bank and give it to Carr. That's also not the reason to back up the Brinks truck to Carr's house and be like, well, we'll just give you a ton of money because there's no other options this year.
Take a
That's
year,
just not a
tank.
recipe for long-term success.
Maybe the recipe in Vegas is to get your franchise big name draft star, face of the future, tank for a year, maybe have a bad year, and then get another superstar in the next draft.
Hell, take your chances with Jimmy G next year.
He's knocking around at Vegas and Jimmy G. I mean, what a perfect combo.
Yeah,
right?
You could go that route for sure. I mean,
What go peanut butter and jelly, Jimmy G and strippers. I mean, it goes together perfectly.
It's worked in the past, right?
You know, he's going to get paid. Somebody's going to take him.
I do.
He's got singles.
Now, I do appreciate that the Niners did take out the Commanders there. That gave some extra life into our playoff hopes, because with them losing and Detroit losing, you know,
It's crazy. Detroit lost, yeah.
So yeah, that I didn't see that one coming. I was definitely betting on Detroit, but you know, I mean, it kind of breathes some new life into our chances to get into that 7th seed. And of course, we're playing the Jets this week, who have been terrible down the stretch. Now, obviously, they have Mike White back, and the team does play better for White than they did for Wilson. But I still think it's a game that the Hawks can win at home. So if the Commanders can maybe get beat by the Browns, that's going to be a tight game, right?
Wentz is back though.
And seed again, because we have the tiebreaker with Detroit.
That's going to be a tough game, though, that Seattle Jets game, because the Jets are a much better team all around, offense and defense, with Mike White as quarterback. Because now all of a sudden the wide receivers are engaged, and then they've got a good running back core. So if they can protect Mike White and they can keep that offense off on the field and that defense restful, and then when they do play, just play lights out. Seattle's got their hands full, but I still think San Fran's that team to beat in the NFC. And I mean, how would you guys gauge to date the play of Brock Purdy?
Bowley.
I mean, Purdy played late. He's played great. He's done everything that Jimmy G would have done in that scenario. So it definitely shows you that who's under center may not necessarily matter as long as you protect the ball and don't do anything dumb.
So wasn't there a bald-headed Shrek-looking dude that said it like 3 or 4 weeks ago when Jimmy G went down and Brock Purdy came in, that said the same thing on this podcast, and all 3 of you said something different? But the Shrek Wreck-It Ralph dude said...
Oh, man, he's pulling the red flag out.
He's getting the progressive red flag challenge out. Let's play it back, huh?
No,
let's play it back.
You were right, man. You were right. It's I was definitely not convinced that the rookie was going to be able to be the guy. I mean, for no other reason than rookies can generally get rattled, but he played really well. Obviously the line is held up well, so he hasn't had to deal with over the top pressure to make him make bad decisions. So if they get a team that can get in there and rattle him, yeah, I mean, I still think as a rookie, he's probably going to make some bad throws. But
of course,
yeah, the thing that he's had over the last few weeks, yeah, of course he's going to make good throws. I think most people in that scenario could.
Right.
Don't discount the fact that he is playing better than I thought he was going to, for sure.
Yeah,
he's definitely impressed me in terms of the last round of the last pick, Mr. Relevant, all of that kind of stuff, and hearing his mechanics from Iowa State. What I found, Sports Illustrated did a great piece on it, where he's actually in between the draft and actually training. He went and remodeled his whole mechanics and everything else, and now he's he's a completely different kind of thrower and pocket presence, and he's using different muscles and everything. Because apparently before he was on his toes and his quads were huge. He was almost like a cyclist, whereas now he's kind of changed his mechanics and he's planted and he's done a lot more work around that sort of side of things, which is maybe surprised a fair few people. But you're right, Jason. He's the system's there. He's come in. He's plugged in. He's not been rattled, so he's been blessed, I suppose, with the fact that he's not faced an elite level defense up to this point. I think maybe the Commanders were one of the tougher defenses he had to face. Even that, he kind of held up his own. No silly mistakes. Nothing was stressful. It's been very odd being a 49ers fan, being in our position, being in this kind of winning streak, and then having a rookie in there. And the last 2 or 3 games have been oddly relaxing to watch.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is a great feeling for us, because we're up at 1 a.m. and it's like, this is nice. It's great.
Right, and it's going to be a completely different season once the playoffs starts, right? Because he's going to see exotic schemes on defense. He's going to see a lot of switches, a lot of cover 2. He's not going to be able to believe his eyes, or he should believe his eyes in times that he's not going to want to believe his eyes. And so, the playoffs are going to be a completely different beast than what he's playing right now. But in some sense, the Jimmy G injury was the best thing that happened to the 49ers. Because I kind of felt like, and I've said this, Gary, since week 1, that's the best 53-man roster in our division, and it's not close. But you didn't play like it. You got beat by the Bears out the gate. Then you got beat by Atlanta. Then you got beat by these teams that were inferior. And it's like, you guys are so head and shoulders better. I think it was almost like you were sitting back thinking, Jimmy G will win us the game, or Debo will win us. Well, now we have Christian McCaffrey. He's going to win us the game. So when Jimmy G went down, it was almost like an awakening. Like, we need to raise our game, and we can. We all need to play like we're capable of playing, all of us. And they have. And all Brock is doing is he's going in there and he's not making mistakes, right? Just don't turn the ball over. I don't need you to win me the game. Just don't lose us the game.
And that's what he's doing. You're right. That's what he's doing. And I think Kyle's helped that. He's schemed it. He's done a lot of things to, as you say, Christian, and he's leaning a bit more on the running game. But he's schemed it in such a way to not put those risky throws even on the menu. He's taken that away.
Listen, you can have your Jalen Hurts, you can have your Patrick Mahomes, you can have your Justin Fields, you can have all these guys, but if you give me a Brock Purdy or oh God, the quarterback over there in Seattle, what's his name?
Gino.
Yeah. Just don't lose me the game.
Well,
make good, sound decisions. Don't turn the ball over, and don't lose the game for me.
I think this is where you're seeing the fact that Purdy was a multi-year starter in college shine, right? Because he had a more look to him that a lot of these guys that were single-year starters getting thrown into the league really don't have. So he is making some line reads that are probably above where you would normally see, a rookie quarterback. And
an equivalent rookie wouldn't make those reads, as you say, because they've only had 2 years at starting, whereas he's had 4 solid years at Iowa State. So
it's like a second or third year, yeah.
So.
But what it, in the same token, it probably means he won't take the jump that a lot of these other guys would take.
So seeing the way, and I asked this, to friends, family members, seeing how Brock has been playing, you guys have a real interesting decision to make in the offseason. You got Brock sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
You got Jimmy G, who just played outside his mind, right? I mean, how do you let that walk off the door? He played incredible this year. And then you got a guy, Trey Lance, that you traded the farm for.
You still don't know.
What do you do? What do you do at that quarterback position? What do you do?
I mean,
it's weirdly enough.
No, I mean, you just still don't know if Trey Lance is actually the guy.
That's
the part about it.
What we have seen, what he has put on film is shitty.
Yep.
But Bo, you're right. We still don't know. No. Just like I'm not convinced to say that Justin Fields is that next up and coming great quarterback. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. He doesn't have any true weapons over there. He can
Yeah.
run great. He's very elusive. So I don't want my quarterback to.
Got a, elusive, can run great, got a cannon of an arm, but that's about it. You don't know any game
I don't know
management, anything like that.
accuracy. I don't know. Yeah. So Trey Lance, what you put on film so far is crap. But the 49ers gave up so much equity for him. You almost have to keep him.
Well, so I
Okay.
mean, so that's the thing, though, right? I mean, it's similar to the Jets with Zach Wilson in the way that, you know, it's fine if you make a mistake in the draft, even if you give up a lot to go get him. Just don't double down on the mistake. Like,
Right.
just recognize, hey, we missed.
With
Got a guy in the room.
But if I'm not mistaken, the Jets didn't trade anything for Zach Wilson, did they?
Has been
they had a second pick. They were
They
there.
had it already, and the Jets have already made that decision.
for sure.
Zach Wilson will not be a Jet next year.
No, and he shouldn't be because Mike White is outperforming
Well,
him.
the Jets have already come out and pretty much said that. The Niners are in a kind of similar but very different. They gave up a ton for this kid.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm with you, Bo. I don't double down on my mistake. I get what I can for Trey Lance. I don't care if it's pennies on the dollar. I get whatever I can for Trey Lance. But I have two quarterbacks in the building, and Jimmy G and Brock Purdy that can get me to where I want to go.
Well,
Problem
and
with that is,
I think that this is where Denver really messed up because they took Wilson and then they extended him before he ever took a snap, right? Now, had they not done that and he was going to play out this year and next year on the contract, they could have seen this just atrocious gameplay and be like, you know, it's bummer we gave up a bunch of stuff, but let's not financially destroy our franchise. Let's just let him play out. Maybe he comes back and it ends up costing us more. Or maybe we play that second year. Turns out he's not the dude. Unfortunately, we lost some players and some draft picks, but we can move forward from there.
Well, you don't see many 10-year veterans go on to other teams and sign a 1-year deal, a 1 or 2 year deal. They want another big contract.
Sure.
I mean, he's got 10 years of tape. He's not like coming off a rookie contract.
You know,
I mean,
it's funny. Even still, they didn't have to do it because he had 2 years left. They didn't have to do the extension. They could have waited till the offseason, done the extension. It was still going to be one of the top ever in the league.
Still getting paid, wasn't it? Yeah.
So I mean, at the end of the day, what it would have been a difference of, you know, $2 or $3 million a year. Like that's a drop in the bucket with the way that the salaries are. I would
hindsight.
Like for me as a GM, I would have waited because I knew I had 2 years, and
Sure.
I like that. Don't sign a player until the last year of a contract, right ahead of the last year. Like I like that kind of mentality that the Seahawks have really embraced because, I mean, you just don't know, right? So it now in this case, obviously, just Zach Wilson, he's putting up numbers that are just terrible,
just bad.
You know,
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, he's probably going to play somewhere next year.
absolutely.
I mean, if you look at his stats starting out, they are fairly similar to Alex Smith. The problem, you know, the big difference between the two is Alex Smith is a likable guy that you want to play for. And Matt Wilson, you want to, you know,
You want to take him out back and smack him in the mouth, right?
Yeah.
You certainly don't want to take him home to mum.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's where it's the biggest difference between the two because numbers actually, Alex Smith had worse numbers, believe it or not.
But from a Niners perspective, going back to your question there, Jay, I think Jimmy's on a 1 year deal this year anyway, right? So he's going to hit the free agency, and we have to pay Bosa. Right, we have to pay Bosa this year. We can't let that go.
No question.
I mean, come on, we got to give that money there. So Jimmy's probably we're going to get priced out of the market for Jimmy. I think somebody somewhere in green in New York or in black and silver is going to give him the money he deserves and the contract he should get. Right, so he's probably going to go somewhere else unless he comes back on another team friendly deal. But I can't see it because he's signing up to almost come back as the third string. Because, as you say, we kind of have to get Trey on the field to test the waters and see what we got. Brock's been a bonus, right? Last pick in the draft, completely out of the blue, cheap as chips. I mean, yes, great story and whatever else, but that's just a pure bonus. It's got to be Trey's starting team. It's got to be number one QB going into next season, even if Brock takes us to the promised land and whatever else. I don't. If not, it's a battle between those two. It's not going to be Jimmy and those two. We just won't be able to afford it. But yeah, as you say, we sold the farm for Trey, and we've seen 3.5 games or something, and not been great. And
Well, you saw
we
games
are
last year too with Trey Lance, and to like Bo was saying, he I. I'm not one to double down on my mistake. Like like Bill Barr said, let the player show you who he is, and then believe him. So, I try to get what I can for him, and then move on with either Brock or Jimmy G, and pray that one of I think Brock would take a backup role, not a third string role. I think he would take a backup role, re-sign Jimmy G. But if Jimmy G goes anywhere, man, what a perfect landing spot the Jets would be. That defense is already really, really good. Can you imagine Sauce Gardner in his second year, what he's going to be like? That defensive line is legit. Can you imagine what Brees Hall is going to be like next year? That running back
Brees,
over there,
yeah,
holy
Donovan White,
cow!
and
With
then you've
those
got Garrett
weapons,
Wilson.
yeah, with those wide receiver weapons, you just spend a lot of draft commodity with that in that offensive line. Maybe a tight end. Wow, look out!
Well, that's their big hole, right? Is tight end. I mean,
Yeah.
That's actually why I think that this game against the Hawks has a real shot, because the position we can't guard is the tight end.
Yeah.
And they don't have a great tight end, whereas when we played KC or the Niners, obviously two of the best tight ends in the game. And so, it's why I feel like we have a shot. I'm a little worried about our quarterback situation going to the end of the year, because who knows what Gino's going to want in a contract, and you lose Locke at the same time. That's one of the things that nobody talks about, is he's a free agent at the end of the year as well. So
and he was a freebie from Denver, right?
Yeah, no, he totally was. But now that means you're coming to the end of the season without a quarterback on the roster.
Ooh. But hey, you've got the third pick, so you could go and get Caleb Williams or.
But that's the thing, is the Texans probably take the first quarterback, and then the Bears are going to get. Well, they're not getting a quarterback.
They should get the linebacker, right? They should get the linebacker out of Alabama.
Hands down, right?
Yeah.
And then
Will Anderson.
Yeah. And then, the Hawks have the third pick, but the problem is again, like we said before, the rest of the quarterbacks in the draft are kind of a project. The last thing you want to do is go from what we had and then now throw a project behind it. So I feel like they're still going to end up going after defensive line and, go after one of these free agents. I mean, there's only, 23 of them. So
refresh my memory, Bo. When's the last time you guys hit on a defensive lineman?
Man, it's been a while. Yeah, I can't remember offhand. It's been a while though. It's not.
He doesn't have the best of luck drafting defensive linemen.
It's true. I mean, I guess the saving grace is this is a really heavy.
Loaded.
The first round has so many defensive line DN type guys in it that, I mean, I feel like you have to at least find one that's competent. Obviously, we signed a defensive tackle off of waivers yesterday from the Ravens. So anything's going to be an upgrade from the way our defensive line is currently sitting. But, I guess let's get Al Woods back, our nose tackle. Maybe that'll help.
Can't hurt. So yeah, it will be, and it's quite interesting that we're starting to, turn towards who's going to draft who, where, and it's a shame that from Jason's point of view that you're not looking into January in terms of meaningful football. You've got two games left, which you just want to get out without too many more injuries or too many more painful things coming down. But it's interesting where we start to plan for next time round and who gets what and where, and what are your needs in the draft? Or is it will you be looking more free agent because you're not going to get. Jason, what's your draft pick looking at now? Where are you?
Right now, we're sitting at the 4th spot.
Yeah.
So you're looking at probably a high end, pretty decent.
I mean, you guys are.
Oh, we don't have enough time in the show to talk about all of it. But hopefully, we can parlay it into like what the Niners did with the Dolphins, right?
Yeah.
I would love to parlay that into 4 or 5 picks. Give it to somebody, trade back in the middle or late in the first round, and because one, and I don't think he's going to be making the pick, but one, I don't fully trust Steve Keim making that pick, and two, we got quite a bit of holes to fill. We need to get younger.
You need numbers, don't you?
Rather on the offensive line, and we need just people on the defensive side of the ball. Period. So.
And it might be the same thing that the Hawks do as well. They might trade that freebie that they got from Denver, and get a haul of picks later in the mid rounds rather than early on.
I could definitely see them trading back that first pick, especially because I do think Arizona does get the 3rd pick from us. I don't think we end up getting that one. Denver probably wins another game. I don't know that you guys do.
The Cardinals
definitely win. Yeah, no, exactly. I think the Cardinals probably end up with that 3rd pick.
Yeah, I think our best chance at a W, obviously not next week against the 49ers, unless you guys are resting
benching everybody.
And yes, that's our only hope. And we play you guys actually surprisingly well, but Atlanta doesn't really do anything well except run the ball. We don't stop the run. We don't really stop anything. But with Colt's going to play this week, and with Colt McCoy, that offense runs a lot better, a lot more efficiently. You're going to see D-Hop get more than 1 catch this week. You're going to see him get 8, 9, 10 catches this week. And you're going to see Hollywood Brown get similar 7, 8 catches. Greg Dortch get some catches. So he's going to mix in the wide receivers a lot more, and you're going to see James Conner really run the ball. I mean, I think he got, 6 yards a carry last game. So you're going to see a much more balanced offense. Atlanta can't stop the ball either. So you're going to see a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be like a 21-23 type game, and hopefully we end up on top. But, neither team has anything to play for but pride. And I think it's going to come down to whatever quarterback can run their team, manage their team more successfully. And I know I say this every week, but I'm going to put the edge on Colt McCoy than that rookie over there in Atlanta.
Yeah, I didn't realize Colt McCoy was coming back. I thought he was going to miss this game too.
Yeah, no, he's not done for the year. I do like that Tyler Algier kid though, that running back for Atlanta.
He looks a good deal.
Hey, J.J. Watt knows he has 2 games left. That's it. So I really think these next 2 games he is going to ball out. And Zach Allen, Majay Sanders, Lecky Fotu, Cam Thomas, those guys on that front line, they know that's like a brotherhood. They are tighter than tight. And they know they have 2 games left together. So, man, I'm hoping. I'm really hoping.
Hoping they ball out for JJ just to the end.
Yeah. I think if we end up sliding back and we don't end up with the 3rd, like if you do end up taking that and we end up sliding back, then I start to think they do trade back. Because again, one of those either tackles or ends will still be available mid first round. And so then I could see us doing the same thing.
There's going to be some QB hungry teams who will want to get in there early.
Sure.
And as you say, some of your targets for your O-line, D-line, and some of those guys are still going to be there in 11, 12, 13. So why not go back there and pick up some extra drafts? It's a no-brainer, from a business sense. But as you say, Jason, from your side, it kind of all depends on who's making that pick.
Right? Yep.
Gents, it's been great catching up with you guys again.
Absolutely.
I wish you both a good happy new year, and we'll catch up again next week before the final hurrah.
Sounds like a plan.
Take it easy, gents.
Still hitting them corners and them lolos.
It's the call of the Cardinals.
There's only one team, and they're the Seahawks. one.
Still taking my time to perfect the beat, and I still got love for the streets. It's the DRE.